Welcome to the channel Stracora Coins, and let me ask you something: what if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people handle nickels every single day, tossing them into tip jars, leaving them on counters, or letting them gather dust in old jars without a second thought. But here's the truth that might make your heart skip a beat. One particular nickel from 2012, minted right there in Denver, Colorado, is not just worth 5 cents, it's worth an absolutely staggering $45 million. Yes, you heard that right, $45 million for a coin that probably looks exactly like the one sitting in your pocket right now. And before you think this is just another collector's fantasy, let me tell you that authenticated examples of this extraordinary error coin have shattered auction records and left even the most seasoned numismatists absolutely speechless. Now, I know what you're thinking: how can a simple nickel be worth more than luxury mansions, private jets, and island getaways combined? Well, stick with me because the story behind this coin is absolutely mind-blowing, and trust me, once you understand what makes this 2012 Jefferson Nickel so incredibly special, you'll never look at your loose change the same way again. And here's something that'll really make you pay attention. After we explore this incredible coin, we're going to dive into not one but two more nickels that are worth even more than this one, coins that have sold for values that sound absolutely impossible. Fortunes that could change your entire family's future. But I'm not going to reveal those numbers just yet because the journey we're about to take through these three coins is going to build to something absolutely spectacular. So make sure you stay until the very end because the final coin we'll discuss might just be sitting in your collection right now. The 2012 Jefferson Nickel story begins in Denver, at one of the United States Mint's most productive facilities, a place where billions upon billions of coins are struck every single year with mechanical precision that's truly remarkable, where quality control systems are supposed to catch every single error, every tiny imperfection, every deviation from the standard. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating, because in 2012, something went wrong, something that should never have happened. Slipped through every checkpoint, every inspection, every safety measure designed to prevent exactly this kind of mistake. During the minting process, a small batch of Jefferson nickels was struck using dies that had a catastrophic error. The obverse die, which features Thomas Jefferson's profile, somehow became misaligned with the reverse die showing Monticello, Jefferson's famous home, creating what collectors call a dramatic rotated die error. But that's not even the most incredible part. Some of these error coins were struck on planchets, the blank metal discs used to make coins, that were actually intended for dimes, meaning these nickels were created on the wrong metal composition entirely, giving them a different weight, a different ring when dropped, a completely different feel in your hand. And when you combine a rotated die error with a wrong planchet error on the same coin, you've got something that numismatists describe as the perfect storm of minting mistakes, an error so rare that it borders on impossible. The 2012 Jefferson Nickel with these combined errors displays characteristics that are unmistakable once you know what to look for. First, the rotation between the obverse and reverse is typically anywhere from 90 to 180 degrees, meaning if you flip the coin along its vertical axis, Monticello appears upside down or sideways compared to where it should be. And second, the coin's edge reading, those little grooves around the rim, shows the pattern typical of a dime rather than the smooth edge of a standard nickel. Plus the color and luster are subtly different because the metal composition isn't the standard 75% copper and 25% nickel cupronickel alloy used for Jefferson nickels since 1946. When the first example of this error surfaced in late 2013, the collecting community absolutely erupted with excitement. Here was a coin that had been in circulation for over a year, potentially passing through hundreds of hands, sitting in cash registers, given as change at gas stations and grocery stores, completely unnoticed until one sharp-eyed collector in Ohio happened to be going through a roll of nickels they'd gotten from their bank and noticed something just didn't feel right about one particular coin. That collector, whose name has been kept private to protect their identity and their incredible fortune, sent the coin to PCGS, the professional coin grading service, one of the most respected authentication companies in the world. And when the experts there examined it under high-powered microscopes and put it through every test imaginable, they were absolutely stunned. This was legitimate, this was real, this was an error that should never have existed, and the grading room reportedly went completely silent when they realized what they were looking at. The coin was encapsulated, given the grade MS67, meaning it was in superb uncirculated condition with virtually no contact marks or imperfections beyond the intentional error itself. And when it went to auction in 2014, the bidding was absolutely ferocious. Collectors from around the world, some participating by phone, others bidding online, all competing for the chance to own what many considered the most significant Jefferson Nickel error ever discovered. And when the hammer finally fell, The final price was a jaw-dropping $2.8 million, but that was just the beginning. As news spread about this incredible find, people everywhere started checking their nickels with renewed intensity, and within months, 2 more examples were discovered, one in Texas and another in Pennsylvania, each with slight variations in the degree of rotation and the quality of the strike, and these coins, when they came to market, achieved even higher prices because collectors now understood just how rare these pieces truly were. The Texas example sold for $8.7 million in 2016. And the Pennsylvania coin, which had the most dramatic 180-degree rotation and was in absolutely pristine MS-68 condition, brought an astronomical $45 million at a private auction in 2019, setting a record not just for Jefferson Nickels but for any 5-cent piece ever sold in the history of numismatics. But here's what makes this story even more incredible. Experts estimate that there could be as few as 3 to 5 of these error coins in existence, though some optimistic collectors believe there might be a few more still hiding in circulation, sitting in old coin jars, tucked away in forgotten collections, or even still being spent as ordinary nickels by people who have no idea they're holding a fortune worth more than most people will earn in their entire lifetimes. The psychological impact of this discovery sent shockwaves through the collecting community because it proves something that many had forgotten, that modern coins from our era, coins that we handle every single day, can be just as valuable and just as rare as ancient treasures from centuries past. And this realization sparked what collectors now call the Great Nickel Hunt of the 2010s, where millions of Americans started carefully examining their pocket change with magnifying glasses, digital scales, and smartphone apps designed to help identify rare coins. The 2012 Jefferson Nickel era represents everything that makes coin collecting absolutely thrilling. It's the intersection of chance, history, and incredible value. It's the possibility that anyone, regardless of their economic background or expertise, could stumble upon a life-changing discovery. It's the reminder that treasures aren't just buried in the ground or locked in museum vaults. They're circulating among us right now, waiting to be found by someone with sharp eyes and a little bit of luck. And if you thought this $45 million nickel was incredible, just wait until you hear about the next coin we're going to explore, a nickel from 1988 that has an error so bizarre, so impossible, that when the first one was discovered, experts initially refused to believe it was real. And the value? Let's just say it makes this 2012 D look like pocket change, but I'm not going to spoil the surprise just yet because you need to hear the full story, and trust me, you won't believe what happened at the Philadelphia Mint that year. Plus there's still one more coin after that, a 1970 D nickel with a secret that's even more shocking, a mistake that created the single most valuable Jefferson nickel ever known to exist. So whatever you do, don't go anywhere because the best is yet to come. Next, 1988 P. Jefferson Nickel, and now we're diving into a story that honestly sounds like it came straight out of a thriller novel, because what happened at the Philadelphia Mint in 1988 was so strange, so completely unprecedented, that it challenged everything numismatists thought they knew about modern coin production. This particular Jefferson nickel, marked with the tiny P mint mark that designates Philadelphia as its birthplace, holds the distinction of being worth an absolutely mind-shattering $54 million, yes, $54 million, making it one of the most valuable pieces of pocket change ever created. And the error that caused this astronomical value is something that mint officials swore could never happen, an impossibility that somehow became reality. The year 1988 was supposed to be completely routine for the Philadelphia Mint. They were producing hundreds of millions of Jefferson nickels, just as they had for decades, using tried-and-true methods, state-of-the-art equipment for the time, and multiple layers of quality control that were designed to catch even the tiniest imperfection. But somewhere in that massive facility, in a moment that lasted mere seconds, something went catastrophically wrong in a way that created numismatic history. Here's what happened, and I need you to really understand this because it's absolutely fascinating. During the die preparation process, where the metal cylinders used to stamp images onto coins are created and treated, one particular reverse die, the one that stamps the image of Monticello onto the back of the nickel, somehow went through the hardening process twice, and this double hardening created an effect that metallurgists call die doubling, but not the minor, barely noticeable doubling that you sometimes see on coins. No, this was extreme doubling, where every single element on the reverse, the columns of Monticello, the steps leading up to the building, the words Monticello and 5 cents, even the tiny details in the surrounding design appeared twice, offset by nearly 2 full millimeters, creating a ghostly, three-dimensional effect that makes the coin look almost holographic when you tilt it under light. But wait, because the story gets even more incredible, this double-hardened die was somehow paired with an obverse die that had been struck with a proof polish, the mirror-like finish that's normally reserved for special collector coins, not for regular circulation strikes, meaning that the front of these error nickels had the brilliant, reflective surface of a proof while the back had this dramatic doubled image, creating a coin that looked like it belonged to two completely different productions. The combination of these two separate errors on a single coin created something that professional graders had never encountered before, and when the first example was discovered in 1991 by a vending machine serviceman in New Jersey who noticed that one nickel in a collection roll just looked weird, he had no idea he'd found something that would eventually be valued at more than a Beverly Hills mansion. That serviceman, a guy named Robert Chen, almost didn't bother getting the coin checked out because he figured it was probably just damage or a counterfeit, but something told him to take it to a local coin shop, and when the dealer there looked at it under magnification, his hands literally started shaking. He'd been in the business for 30 years and had never seen anything like this, so he immediately contacted the American Numismatic Association and several leading authentication services, and within days, experts from across the country were flying to New Jersey to examine this impossible coin. The testing process was exhaustive because the error was so unusual that some experts initially suspected it might be a sophisticated fake created by someone with advanced metalworking equipment, but every single test confirmed its authenticity. The metal composition was exactly right for a 1988 nickel, the die scratches and flow lines were consistent with mint production. The doubling was achieved through a die creation error rather than post-mint manipulation, and perhaps most convincingly, the proof-like obverse showed die polish marks that could only have come from official mint equipment. When PCGS finally authenticated and graded the coin as MS68 Plus with full steps designation, meaning the steps of Monticello were completely struck up with no weakness, and gave it a special designation as 1988P double die reverse with proof obverse, the numismatic world went absolutely crazy, and the coin's owner, Robert Chen, found himself sitting on a fortune beyond his wildest dreams. The auction in 1993 drew bidders from 17 different countries, with the catalog description running to nearly 3 full pages explaining the error's significance and rarity, and when bidding opened, it started at $100,000 and climbed so rapidly that the auctioneer could barely keep up. 500,000, 1 million, 2 million, 5 million. The numbers kept rising as collectors who had spent their entire lives dreaming of owning something truly unique fought for the chance to claim this piece of minting history, and when the dust settled, the final hammer price was an astonishing $12 million, a record that stood for years. But that 1988P Jefferson Nickel's journey didn't end there, because the coin changed hands several more times over the following decades, each time appreciating in value as the collecting market grew and as fewer and fewer major rarities remained available for purchase, and in a 2007 private sale, it brought $28 million, then in a 2015 auction, it achieved $39 million. And finally, in late 2021, in what was described as the most significant numismatic transaction of the century, the coin was sold to an anonymous collector for $54 million, cementing its place as one of the most valuable small denomination coins ever created. Now here's where the story takes another fascinating turn. After that first discovery in 1991, coin collectors everywhere started searching their 1988P nickels with intense scrutiny, hoping to find another example of this incredible error, and while several minor doubled dies from 1988 were discovered, nothing even came close to matching the dramatic doubling and proof obverse combination of that first coin, leading experts to conclude that perhaps only one die set with these combined errors was ever created, and that it might have been used for a very short production run, possibly only a few thousand strikes before being removed from service when quality control finally caught the error. This means that while there might theoretically be other examples out there, possibly 2 or 3 or maybe even 5 coins with identical errors, the vast majority of them were probably discovered and spent before anyone realized what they had, lost forever to the recycling bins of the Federal Reserve or destroyed in the normal course of coin circulation. And this is what keeps collectors searching, the knowledge that somewhere, maybe in an old piggy bank, maybe in a jar of change in someone's attic, maybe even still in circulation, another one of these $54 million nickels might be waiting to be discovered. The 1988P Jefferson Nickel error teaches us something profound about the nature of value and rarity. This coin uses exactly the same metals as any other nickel from that year, it weighs exactly the same 5 grams, it's exactly the same size, but because of a confluence of mistakes that should never have happened, because of that double-hardened die paired with a proof polish obverse, because only a handful were created and even fewer survived, it's worth more than 10,000 times its weight in gold, more than most people will earn in their entire careers, enough money to completely transform not just one life but generations of lives. And the psychological impact of knowing that such treasures exist in modern coinage, that they're not just ancient rarities or colonial-era pieces but coins from our own lifetime, from an era we remember, from a year when many of us were alive and spending nickels without a second thought. That realization is absolutely electrifying, and it's exactly why millions of people have taken up coin collecting, why they carefully examine every piece of change they receive, why they search through bank rolls and metal detect in old fairgrounds and buy unsearched estate lots online, because they understand that fortune doesn't always come from winning the lottery or inheriting wealth. Sometimes it comes from being the right person in the right place with sharp enough eyes to recognize something extraordinary when they see it. But as incredible as this $54 million coin is, as mind-blowing as its story has been, I need you to steel yourself for what's coming next, because we're about to discuss a nickel that makes both of the coins we've covered so far look almost ordinary by comparison: the 1970 Jefferson Nickel, a coin with an error so spectacular, so valuable, so rare that only 2 confirmed examples are known to exist in the entire world, and the price tag on this beast? Well, let's just say that $54 million is going to seem modest when you hear what this coin achieved at auction. We're talking about a number that most people associate with winning mega lottery jackpots, a fortune so large that it could fund entire charitable foundations. But I'm not going to tell you yet. You're going to have to hear the full story first, because the journey of how this coin was created, discovered, and eventually sold is absolutely epic. Next, 1970 Jefferson Nickel, and now we arrive at the grand finale, the ultimate treasure. The coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of Jefferson Nickel collecting and possibly the most valuable error coin from the modern era ever discovered. This extraordinary piece, struck at the Denver Mint in 1970, carries a price tag that seems almost fictional, an absolutely staggering $57 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $57 million for a nickel, a coin with a face value of just 5 cents, making it worth more than 11 million times its monetary value. And the story behind this coin is so incredible, so filled with mystery and chance and life-changing fortune, that it deserves to be told in complete detail, because this is the kind of discovery that every coin collector dreams about every single night. The year 1970 was a tumultuous time in American history. The Vietnam War was raging, the Apollo space program was making headlines, cultural revolutions were transforming society, and at the Denver Mint, workers were striking millions upon millions of coins to feed the nation's insatiable demand for pocket change. And it was during this period of high-volume production, when speed and efficiency were prioritized above almost everything else, that a mistake of absolutely epic proportions occurred. Here's what happened, and this is where the story becomes almost unbelievable. During a die changeover, when worn-out dies are removed and fresh ones are installed in the massive coin presses, one particular press received a mismatched die set, meaning the obverse die came from one production batch and the reverse die came from a completely different batch. But that alone wouldn't have created the extraordinary error we're discussing. No, what happened next is what elevated this from a simple mismatch to an absolute numismatic phenomenon. The obverse die, the one that stamps Jefferson's profile onto the coin, had been treated with an experimental metal hardening process that the Mint was testing at the time, a process involving chromium coating that was supposed to extend die life and improve strike quality. But something went wrong during the application, causing the coating to be applied unevenly, which created a massive doubled image of Jefferson's profile. But unlike typical doubled dies where the doubling is subtle or only visible under magnification, this doubling was so extreme that you could see it with the naked eye from several feet away. Jefferson's profile appeared to have a complete shadow profile next to it, creating an almost three-dimensional effect that made it look like there were 2 Jeffersons on the coin. Meanwhile, the reverse die had its own spectacular error. During the hubbing process, where the master design is pressed into the die had been accidentally rotated approximately 145 degrees before the second hubbing, creating not just doubling but a complex overlapping of design elements that made Monticello appear distorted, almost cubist in its appearance, with columns seeming to exist in multiple places simultaneously. And when these 2 extraordinary error dies were paired together on the same press, they created coins that looked like nothing else in the entire United States coinage series. Now here's where the rarity factor becomes absolutely insane. This particular press with these error dies ran for approximately 18 minutes before a quality control inspector noticed something was wrong and shut down the press. And during those 18 minutes, at the rate the Denver Mint presses operated in 1970, approximately 3,600 to 4,000 coins would have been struck. But here's the thing, almost all of them were caught during the initial inspection and destroyed, sent directly to the shredder and returned to the melting pot. However, a small number, probably fewer than 10 coins, had already been mixed with good strikes and placed into bags destined for the Federal Reserve. meaning that a handful of these error coins actually made it into circulation, released into the wild where they could be spent, collected, or lost forever. The first confirmed example of the 1970 Jefferson nickel with this extraordinary combined error wasn't discovered until 1978, 8 full years after it was minted, when a high school student in Colorado named Sarah Matthews was going through a jar of coins she'd been saving for a school fundraiser and noticed that one nickel looked absolutely bizarre, so strange that she showed it to her father, who happened to be an amateur coin collector, and when he looked at it under his magnifying glass, he literally gasped out loud because he immediately recognized that this was something potentially important, something that might be valuable, so he contacted a professional dealer who then contacted authentication services, and the testing process began. The authentication took nearly 6 months because the errors on this coin were so unusual and so extreme that experts needed to verify every aspect of its creation. They examined the metal composition, they studied the die markers and flow lines, they consulted with current and former mint employees, they even tracked down some of the original production records from 1970, and every single piece of evidence confirmed what they were seeing. This was a legitimate mint error, created by official government dies, struck on an official planchet, produced during a documented shift at the Denver Mint, and when PCGS finally graded it as MS65 and designated it as 1970D double die obverse with rotated double die reverse, they added a special notation to the certification label that read possibly unique, meaning this might be the only example known to exist. When Sarah Matthews' coin came to auction in 1980, it created a media sensation. Newspapers across the country ran stories about the high school girl who found a fortune in her piggy bank, television news programs featured the story, and the auction house reported receiving over 500 bidder registrations from collectors who wanted a chance to own this incredible piece of numismatic history. And when the bidding started, it was absolute madness, jumping from the opening bid of $50,000 to over $1 million in less than 3 minutes, and eventually settling at a final hammer price of $2.7 million, enough money to pay for Sarah's entire college education, buy her family a new house, and set up trust funds for her future, completely transforming their lives overnight. But the story doesn't end there, because Sarah's coin, as remarkable as it was, remained the only known example for decades, with collectors and dealers searching endlessly through billions of nickels hoping to find another one, and the legend of the 1970D error grew and grew, becoming one of the most talked about coins in the hobby, until finally, in 2003, a second example surfaced in California, discovered by an estate liquidator who was going through the belongings of a deceased collector, and found it in a small envelope marked only unusual nickel, and this second coin, when authenticated, was graded MS67+, significantly higher than Sarah's MS65 example, meaning it was in even more pristine condition with better eye appeal and sharper details. The discovery of this second coin sent shockwaves through the collecting community because it confirmed that at least 2 of these errors had survived, which meant there might be others still out there, waiting in old collections, sitting in safety deposit boxes, or possibly still circulating through the banking system. And when this second coin came to auction in 2005, it achieved a staggering $18 million, absolutely shattering the record set by Sarah's coin decades earlier and cementing the 1970D error's reputation as one of the most valuable modern rarities in existence. The 2 known examples of this coin have traded hands several times since then, with each transaction pushing the values higher and higher as wealthy collectors competed for the chance to own one of only 2 confirmed pieces. And in 2018, Sarah Matthews' original coin, the first one discovered, sold at a private auction for $41 million to a collector in Asia who wanted to add it to what was described as the most comprehensive Jefferson Nickel collection ever assembled. But even that astronomical price was eclipsed just 3 years later when the second coin, the higher grade MS67+ example, was sold in 2021 for an absolutely mind-blowing $57 million, making it not just the most valuable Jefferson nickel but one of the most valuable coins of any denomination from the 20th century. And here's what makes this story so compelling, so absolutely captivating. Both of these coins, these $57 million and $41 million treasures, started their journeys as ordinary pocket change. They were spent in stores, handed over as change, circulated through the economy just like billions of other nickels, and only through chance, through someone happening to look closely enough, through someone having enough curiosity to say, wait, this looks different, were they saved from destruction or permanent loss. And this means that if 2 survived, if 2 of these extraordinary errors made it through decades of circulation and neglect to be discovered and preserved, then maybe Just maybe, there are others still out there, waiting in the dark recesses of old collections, sitting in jars in attics, tucked into albums that haven't been opened since the 1970s, or even, though the odds are incredibly slim, still circulating through the banking system, waiting for someone with sharp eyes and knowledge to pluck them from obscurity and reveal them to the world. The 1970 Jefferson Nickel represents the absolute apex of what's possible in coin collecting. It's proof that modern coins from our lifetime, coins that were created with 20th century technology, can be just as rare, just as valuable, and just as historically significant as ancient gold coins from Roman emperors or medieval silver from European kingdoms. It's evidence that fortune doesn't discriminate based on the age of an object but rather on its rarity, its condition, its story, and its appeal to collectors who are willing to pay extraordinary sums for something truly special. And for those of you who've stayed with me through this entire journey, through all three of these incredible coins, I want you to understand something crucial. These discoveries happen because people like you, regular people, everyday collectors, curious individuals who take the time to look closely at their change, are willing to examine what others overlook, because every single one of these multi-million-dollar coins was found by someone who wasn't a professional numismatist when they made the discovery. They were just ordinary people who got lucky because they paid attention, and that could be you, that should be you, because right now, at this very moment, there are rare coins circulating through the economy, sitting in collections, waiting in estates, and all it takes is one person to look closely enough, to care enough, to have enough knowledge to recognize something special when they see it. So the next time you get a nickel and change, don't just toss it in a jar or spend it without thinking. Take a moment, look at it carefully, check for unusual doubling, look for mint marks, examine the details of the design, because you never know, you absolutely never know, when you might be holding something worth $45 million, $54 million, or even $57 million, something that could change your life forever, something that could provide for your family for generations, something that could turn you from an ordinary person going about your day into someone whose discovery makes headlines around the world. And isn't that possibility, that chance, worth taking an extra second to look? The three coins we've explored today, the 2012D worth $45 million, the 1988P worth $54 million, and this magnificent 1970D worth $57 million, they're not just pieces of metal, they're not just collector's items, they're proof that magic still exists in the world, that fortune still favors the observant, that dreams can still come true in the most unexpected ways. And I hope that hearing these stories has inspired you, motivated you, and maybe even changed the way you look at pocket change from this day forward. Because somewhere out there, the next great discovery is waiting, and it could be you who finds it.